Be the Plume goon since start out, need permission, now I stay real with it. Lay one foundation, know it's gon' build, bro, I been biddle with it. Your homeboy check the cash out, smart contracts with a cash out. Everybody want smoke till I turn the dare, show you where the house at. Spun the block, turns out I been BlackRock.
What is going on, everybody? This is Underdog Research Channel. Hope that you are here. Hope that you are well, and I hope are you ready for the Plume Report. Now, this is the Plume Report. I'm going to get into it. Let's talk a little bit about it, what the Plume Report is. Now, the Plume Report is a weekly real-world assets coverage. No one's doing this, but I decided I want to give you that value so you can put yourself in position to win. You don't have to go looking all over the place. I put everything right here about Plume Network, a huge #1 real world asset project, and I give you all the insights without the hype. Now, if you're seeing this for the first time, scan a QR code. This is typically for my members only, but today I'm going to provide it for everybody here today. Now, you can view this, but I have a lot of visuals. So if you're watching this, I would recommend that you put this on a big screen, put this on a laptop, and get comfortable, because I'm going to talk about Plume Network and why I see some of the biggest moves being made, and you're here early for a change. So without further ado, let's get into it. This Plume Report is going to cover the period of January 12th of 2026 and January 19th of 2026. I took everything that they have accomplished and done and give you insights for that week. This is a weekly report. So let's look into this and let's talk about some key things that you need to know. First thing I want to start off telling you is that real world assets is a big deal. How big is this? Well, let's talk about that. Total distributed real world assets is 21 billion when you're looking at the marketplace, but there is $400 trillion globally asset base for real world assets. So if you think about how many times 1,000 billion could go into a trillion, if you think about 400 trillion, Plume is the #1 in this space. So if you're thinking about the next few years of what you see occurring with real world assets, and I know that not everyone knows what real world assets are. Trust me, this is going to be something that everybody wants to be a part of, and everybody wants to get a little piece of that pie. Let's talk about some of the things that we learn in Plume. So week 1, I want to talk about in the Plume Report, an overview of what you're going to see today. Now, this week on Plume, it was a clear transition point. This was a huge week. The reason this week moved so differently is that it moved past just infrastructure, and the signaling was telling me that there is a live financial execution in the real world asset space. Now, simultaneously, while this is happening, we see major announcements of the token of Plume entering into the space. But this week, during the time of this reporting period, there was a major unlock. Now, this unlock window, what was that about? It materially changes the circulating supply of Plume Network. There was 4 billion Plume released because that was tokens that early backers, early investors, people who were into Plume to make Plume possible today, they had an agreement with Plume that they would get their money back. And so there's a little bit of nervousness going on during this time period, because people are like, well, how much is it going to affect the price of Plume? Because the overall crypto space is down. Well, that happened, and we're going to go into what happened at the unlock, which was January the 20th of 2026. Now, over that past week that we're discussing, activity was very clustered around 4 categories: official announcements, ecosystem actions, market infrastructure signals, and token supply event, which was the one that most people were wanting to know more about. Now, this was high level stakes, and is simply important to understand. Plume is no longer positioning itself for real world assets and finance alone. It is actively operating within that space. So we're going to be going through that. I want you to take a look at this. This is basically the overview of what I just said. And I'm going to go through each of these things that are noticed in the week of activity. So let's talk about that activity. Now, this week on Plume, what we saw marks a huge transition point for Plume Network. And I want to be very precise when I say this. Not a marketing transition change, not a narrative transition. It's not operational transition. Over that past week, activity clustered across those 4 categories I just mentioned. And rarely they line up at the same time, but Plume, they lined up. There's these official announcements, ecosystem actions, market infrastructure signals, and the token supply events. That was the one that's the most critical. Now, usually in crypto and also in a product like a stock, you will see this and you'll look at it and it's not sequential like we see here. But that's the thing that stood out. And I think it's important that we understand that something happened during the week of January the 12th through the 20th that is a little bit different. And we got to pay attention to these signals. These are signals that you're getting right here in the report. We're not giving hype. We're not getting technical analysis. These are real signals. Now, when I see that Plume is positioning itself, and I said that it's no longer just real world assets and finance, I'm about to show you some real huge connections that I talked about months prior to it. And the reason we continue to get here early as an investor, you want to get there early as possible. It's because I'm looking at these signals. So what are the signals? What was the transition? This is going to matter more in the coming weeks than people realize. So let me give you some of that. Let's start off with this conversation. October 13th, 2025, the Bermuda connection. I start talking about this Bermuda connection, and I'm going to put this here. I want you to take a look at it if you're taking notes. I talked about this in another project called Swift Coin, and I also made a connection with Plume Network. Now, Swift and Plume Network identified something for me, and this is not a coincidence. Notice the date. Now, I'm about to show you a video, but before I show you these little snippets of video, I want you to say to yourself, Underdog told us about this October 13th of 2025. It's now 2026. So we're talking about over 90 days before these announcements came. Let's talk about Plume. Let's see what announcements. I'm going to talk about today an announcement that came from Plume Network. The date of that announcement shows January the 12th of 2026. Plume has submitted formal comments to the Bermuda Monetary Discussion Paper on asset tokenization. This supports our global initiative of safe, secure, tokenized real-world asset markets through balanced policy, and we recommend the BMA leadership. So we see here on January the 12th of 2026, Plume makes this announcement that they have been in contact with the government of Bermuda. Now, if you're not paying attention to these narratives, then you might overlook that, because if you're not in Bermuda, you say, what does it matter? You can't understand if something's important if you don't know what to look for. You need to look for that. You need to understand and hear the word Bermuda. And I'm about to explain why. And I'll be doing an upcoming discussion about the Bermuda connection with Plume, but let's talk about this. October 13th of 2025. That's a very significant day. I'm going to share with you what occurred there. On this date, I did a video, the Swift Coin Zero Knowledge Profit video. Now, this video, episode 1 of this series, I talked about a connection between Bermuda and a company called Alpha Innovations and Global Innovators, which is the company, sub-company to Alpha Innovations in New York in the United States. So there's a connection between Bermuda, this company that's in Bermuda, but also has a second company in New York. Now I'm going to bring this up right now. Let's see if we can find what I talked about then. So this is a little look at that now. And let me take this off so you can see this for yourself. And let's talk about it. Alpha Innovations and Arcanium Capital announced the launch of Arcanium Emerging Technologies Fund 1. Asset manager launches emerging markets focus on blockchain venture capital fund. Laureate's platform. and Arcanium Capital. They launched this where? Hampton, Bermuda, and New York on February 15th, 2021. Who is Alpha Innovations? Where is the money coming from? Pay attention. From Bermuda, this was launched. A fund on Alpha Innovations. Launch of Arcanium's Emerging Technology Fund 1, called also the fund, on Alpha Innovations Laureates Fund platform. The fund is focused on providing seed and series financing blockchain technology companies for emerging markets. They didn't give their money to a company that was not providing a service for an institutional investor. So that means that Arcanium Capital had to select early blockchain technologies that could service who? Institutional investors. And what can they service? Tokenized assets, cryptocurrencies, NFTs. I want you to focus on that tokenized assets. What did we find out? We found out that hardware wallets are need to be secured. Is there AI today? Is there data breaches today? Zero knowledge technologies all being integrated. The rails before the money flows. And here we go again. And then we find out, they tell us that Alpha Innovations from Bermuda is the parent company of AI Global Investors in the United States. So not only is it not a foreign country technology, we have integration here in a good USA with both Arcanium Capital, which is in Bermuda and has a branch here in the United States, and New York has their work here in the USA. Now, that's important. We see this and we see it clearly. This is huge. Do you see that the money rails are connected to Bermuda? The money rails are connected to the United States and the investors. The money rails are connected to Bermuda. The money rails are connected to the United States. Zero knowledge technologies or privacy tokens. All of last year, I discussed that. And here we see a Bermuda connection that you received in October of 2025. But in January, Plume makes an announcement about this, but maybe it's a one-off, right? So you think to yourself, well, maybe this is just a one-off. Maybe there's just a coincidence, right? Because here's the president, Lawrence Newhook of Alpha Innovations, connected to this money rail months before, as you saw here, and I'm not going to play the full video here. February 15th of 2021, that's when this actually occurred. I brought it up in October of 2025. Now, the reason that's important is because we have to start to see that there's a cause effect and there's visionaries. Oftentimes we're very short-sighted and we're looking at the Plume Network report that I'm giving you, or you're looking at online posts on X, and your knowledge is only based on what they're telling you. But you got to go deeper past that. You got to go past the surface. If you're truly in a project and you want to invest in it, I can't give you advice, but I can tell you this. If you don't do the work to identify what they are about to do, you'll continue to be slaves to what people tell you through hype. And by the time you learn of it through hype, you're getting the higher prices for it. I want to put you in a position that you're getting in before the hype. You're getting in before the money flows to it. That's how you win. So let's look at this. October 2025, I told you that the money rails are laid through zero knowledge technologies and privacy. Now, you got to go through my series. I have a special series, scan the QR code I showed you at the beginning of this, or look in the video description and you can find how to become a member. And also I have a free series called the Connected series. All this talked about last year about this thing called zero knowledge technologies that are needed in order for the financial system that is changing to become in effect right now, not in the future, right now. That's what's already happening. Now, why that's important is I want you to pay attention to this. January 27th of 2026, something else has happened. Now remember, so we got to keep our timeline correct. We have a announcement with Plume. That announcement with Plume happened January 12th of 2026. I talked about this Bermuda connection that occurred October 2025. But now I'm bringing up a different concept. Now, this person that you're going to see here, and that's bring the picture up, is Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, the largest United States approved centralized exchange. It brings in some of the top projects, brings in top money, and everybody knows now it also is publicly traded, so you can get stock into Coinbase. If you're new to crypto or old to crypto, you know what Coinbase is. Brian Armstrong, you've seen him a lot on TV lately. He's been talking to the president of the United States. He's been talking to members of Congress. He has been behind and talking about his contribution to the thing that is called the Clarity Act. And he recently rejected the current form of the Clarity Act, which was really big news. And they were looking for this. He talked about all these things. And I just want to put that out there because some people might be watching this and you're like, well, what's the matter? I know about Coinbase, but I don't know who's behind it. Brian Armstrong is the CEO. So I follow CEOs, I follow companies, I follow technology, I follow the money. That's what I'm going to bring you to. Now, we're still just in the first aspect of the Plume Report, but let's talk about this. I'm going to bring up something that he said.
Oh, this is going to be incredible.
I think just to make it even more ridiculous. Is that how they teach world leaders to?
All the time.
No. The power pose.
All the time. Don't worry. Come on in. Let's have a fun one.
Yeah, I like this one. I like this.
That's awesome.
That was a good sport.
That was great. There's no non-awkward way to do a three-way handshake or something.
Yeah, now I know.
You know.
Now, if you look at this at the top, January 27th, 2026, this is what Brian Armstrong left in a post. Fun picture, but serious partnership. Bermuda is bringing its national economy on chain with Coinbase and Circle. So right here, as you can see, Brian Armstrong is sharing that Bermuda is bringing its entire economy on the blockchain. And not only that, but there's a partnership with Coinbase here in the United States. Coinbase partnered with the country of Bermuda. The 21-mile country has a lot of money flowing through it, and we're going to talk about that. And also Circle. Now, this is huge. Why would they make this announcement? We found before this post that October of 2025, I shared with you a very special connection between money rails being laid down in Switzerland, flowing through to Bermuda. And I said, you have to make sure that you're paying attention to this connection between the United States and Bermuda because money is flowing through it. And what specifically is flowing through it? Well, I brought this up February 15th of 2021, that the money rails were laid as early as that. And this is just one example of it through a company called Alpha Innovations, which is in my series, which is connected to the United States, flowing from Switzerland to Bermuda. Alpha Innovations is a Bermuda company, but they have a second company because they're the parent company, which is located in the United States. Now, that company's name is Global Investors. Now, global investors, and that's AI investors, global investors, but their parent company is called Alpha Innovations. Now, it's not a coincidence that these things are happening. Now, let's talk about this. Recently, on January 14th of 2026, this was January 14th, 2026, BlackRock Investing, a good friend of mine who also is a creator and a researcher for cryptocurrencies and technologies. We did a collaboration together where we talked about this very thing. Again, the connection with Bermuda. And I'll bring that up in just a second. Now let's bring it to Plume. Let's talk about this. So here's Plume, and this is the announcement made. On January 12th, Plume has submitted formal comments to Bermuda's monetary discussion paper on asset tokenization. This supports our global initiative for safe, secure, tokenized real-world asset markets through balanced policy, and we commend the Bermuda monetary leadership. Plume's letter on asset tokenization to the Bermuda Monetary Authority. That was January the 12th of 2026. So let's go over the timeline again. Bermuda is not something that you should pay attention to. You need to start looking up Bermuda news. October of 13th of 2025, you learn of a connection that I provide you between Bermuda and the United States. I gave you just one example because of the money rails through payments and remittances that I noticed through the research. October identified that this money rail had been envisioned since February of 2021. It's now 2026. So now you know that 5 years before we're starting to see these announcements, these moves were being made to make these money rails be established. Then we found on January the 12th of 2026, we see that Plume Network talks about that connection, real world assets and tokenized assets, and they commend Bermuda and they show you the connection between themselves writing to the authorities in Bermuda. And then we see Brian Armstrong just 13 days later, who is the CEO of Coinbase, with that leader in Bermuda over the Bermuda Monetary Authority. And they announce a partnership with Circle and themselves. So we got Plume networking with Bermuda. We got Coinbase networking with Bermuda. We got Plume, the #1 in real world assets and tokenization and all their networks and who they're connected with. And we see the money rails from Switzerland to Bermuda connected to the United States. In investigations, they call that a clue. Now, going further in this connection alone, Alex Palmer posted this, and it was a repost from Plume. What did they repost? Working with regulators like Bermuda Monetary on improving on-chain capital markets is one of the highlights of our strategy for years to come. Now, Plume states again, as real-world asset policy evolves, the goal is clear: enable safe, compliant on-chain capital markets that can scale globally without recreating legacy inefficiencies. Read the letter. So I have read the letter. And the letter, I think that you all should also read. The purpose of the Plume Report is not just for me to do the work for you and put it all in one place, although I know that's convenient. And I know many of you like that aspect, so you don't have to go searching on X and YouTube and go to all these things. I put it all in one place. You have to read and invest that time into reading what they're putting out there, because you can get more than nuggets. You can get a roadmap, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're going to be talking about this more on Underdog Research Channel in my upcoming video that I call the Bermuda Connection, which I'll be talking about not only Plume, but another project as well called SwiftCoin and its connection. But it's not just them. We're talking about XRP and other huge names connected through Bermuda, the insurance companies, the tokenization, why Bermuda, all that's important. And I just want y'all to know, we're just on the very first part of the Plume Report. So we're probably not going to be able to finish all the Plume Reports. So I'll pick this back up. But that's what you get if you decide that you want to become a member of the Underdog Research Channel. Make sure you scan the QR code and right here, and that will become a member. You get the weekly Plume Report. On the right QR code, you get the real world asset Plume Report, and that is different. It shows you where the capital is moving. This shows you the activity of Plume and what they're doing. The other one shows you all the real world assets in comparison and what's happening in the market, basically like a technical analysis, but with real world assets. Trust me, you invest your time now, you're going to really be happy that you do that. So that's the very first part I want to make sure I take the time to pay attention to and talk about. Now, next in the Plume Report, let's talk about what else happened. This week on Plume, the most significant development that I think a lot of people were not aware of, but I'm going to make you aware of it right now, is a USD1, a yield-bearing stablecoin is now live on Plume Network. This isn't a test, and this isn't a preview. Now, you know USD1, World Liberty Finances, that's their stablecoin. And yes, just for those, regardless of your political affiliation, that is the Trump family's USD1, World Liberty Finance. That is their stablecoin. It goes with that company. Again, you know, the reality is, regardless of your politics, this is what has happened in the Plume network. They onboarded the launch of USD1. And they have a yield-bearing stablecoin. So that means not just if you get $1 and that stablecoin, and you just keep $1. If you have a stablecoin from USD1, is the name of the stablecoin, you can invest it in the Plume network, and you can get a return on your investment. That's called yield. I'm not going to focus on that aspect of it for this Plume Report, but I do want you to know that was a huge deal that now that USD1 is live on Plume. Now, I've told you in previous conversation about Plume, there's a partnership that Chris Yin, who is one of the co-founders of Plume, met with the President of the United States and also the Vice President of the United States at the onset of their presidency beginning in 2025. And there was an announced partnership there. But this is different because this shows a specific intentional partnership between World Liberty Finance and Plume, and not only just the use of USD1. What does that partnership do? And it gives you back money. If you hold that particular USD1, you can get yield if you invest it. So that's huge. Now, here's the part many people gloss over, and I want to make sure that we don't gloss over it. Users can mint now USD1 and redeem directly using USD1 or USDC. And those will still remaining yield bearing while on chain in Plume. Now, there's no more speculative demand. This is real world demand that people are investing in stable coins. We got the Genius Act. We're trying to get the Clarity Act. So there's already infrastructure and legalities for this. There's not a token narrative behind it. I'm not saying that USD1 is great and Circle is great or Tether is great. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that there is a value exchange that you can use this USD1 in the Plume network and get something back for it. You know, just like a bank account, savings account, or anything else, there's pros and cons and benefits. So this is one of the benefits of using Plume is that you can mint, integrate, and invest within one network with World Liberty Finance's token in Plume. And this is a functional demand for stablecoins because, as you know, the stablecoin strategy is the strategy that a lot of companies and countries are utilizing in order to get ahead of everyone else for the future. So why be behind? If we see that it's happening right now, why be behind? Money is green. Politics should be purple, and crypto definitely is purple. So global economies are going to utilize this, and they're utilizing it now. So that's what's happened as well. So going through that, I want you to also see this as well. This is what shipped. So what I call what shipped is what it went live that's of importance. So if you're looking for what was important, Underdog, what do we need to know? The most significant development this week that a lot of attention was around in the network was this development here. It's this USD1 development. Now, again, if the USD1 is built on World Liberty Finance's network and is deployed through a thing called Lorenzo Protocol. Now, we're not going to talk too deep about Lorenzo Protocol, but this matters because if Plume is moving in the real world assets rail and hosting live on chain yield bearing tokens like USD1 and other stable coins, this is a functional demand and not narrative positioning. And it really reinforces the convergence between pay finance and real world assets. If you only focus on what you know about Plume, the only thing you can see is the fact that real world assets, and many people don't know what that means either. The stable coin itself is the only true proven real world assets, because that's exactly what it is. A stable coin falls as other than real world assets because people don't know better, but it's actually a real world assets, and it's been proven. We know we use USDC, Circle, Tether. We use all these USDC, Circle, Tether normally as stable coins. We've been doing that for years in the crypto market. So this is not too far from that. Only we're finding different ways to not only hold it, but to make money by holding these things through other networks. Now, looking at this announcement, when did it happen? So Plume made this announcement January the 15th of 2026. Now, here you go. So you can see it. USD1, a yield-bearing product built on World Liberty Finance, USD1 by Lorenzo Protocol is now live on Plume. So that's where I got that from. So again, what's the purpose of you learning this? The Plume Report is specific, intentional for you to see what did Plume do this week? How did it affect the project overall? Did it expand it? What went live? And where can you get all this information in one consolidated space? So that's what you got right here. So that's what happened with Plume, January 15th of 2026. Again, we got the Lorenzo Protocol. Now, don't skim past that. Lorenzo Protocol. One of the things I do, people always ask me, Underdog, how do you get to things early like you do? You know, you've gotten there years early, months early, weeks early, days early. How do you get there early? Because it's scary when you're there early because no one's talking about it. People are not talking about Plume as much. People are not talking about these things. What I do is I look at the overall structure of what I'm seeing. And I also contemplate what things may be important, but are hidden within all the hype and all the fluff and that you don't pay attention to. So let's bring this up. What is the Lorenzo Protocol? So if I don't know something, I have to research it so I can better understand it. So it says directly Plume using USD1, USDC with bridging supported by Chainlink, CCIP, to enable seamless cross-chain network access. Have you heard of Chainlink? So now I know that Chainlink, a very popular and very futuristic project that people have used and has a lot of value, has a connection to this protocol that I'm not so familiar with, called Lorenzo Protocol. But they didn't say too many big names for me to ignore. So that's one of the things I do. So, you know, I'm going to be looking into what the Lorenzo Protocol is more in depth so I can have better explain it to you. But after I do that, I tend to kind of group these things together and kind of decide whether or not this is important for what's going to happen. That's how you get there first. So that's what we have so far. Let's go to the next section. So what capabilities did Plume add during the week of January 12th, 2026 through January the 20th, 2026? So this is what was added. So if we look at this, the launch added something deeper than just a product. Now, this was added, the USD1. Plume now supports this stablecoin, the native yield rails. Cross-network liquidity access is what that represents. Automated off-chain to on-chain yield conversion. Emerging market PayFi execution. But let's slow that down. Let's slow it down because I'm saying a lot of words and you might say, well, I don't know what that means. So let's talk about what did this launch really do? What capability did this add to Plume so you can better understand the project and the token that you may hold? So if you look at it, liquidity now can move across chains and arrive on Plume and remain on Plume, and they can have yield bearing once they're there on Plume. So if somebody gives you $20 and they transfer it from their bank, and let's say they're at Wells Fargo and you're at Bank of America, that's a network of Wells Fargo, network of Bank of America. What we're saying here is that Plume, with the integration and partnership with World Liberty Finance and the stablecoin, is showing you that they're functional outside of just RWAs on chain. You got money, real money, moving billions of dollars potentially or more that can move into the Plume network seamlessly. And then that money doesn't just stay there. That money can build yield. It means you can get more money back by staking, by having and holding this particular stable coin. That's important expansion, and that's why that capability needs to be noted and added. So if you only think about Plume as real world assets, you're missing the point. Plume has more capabilities. So that's strategic, and it's a very clear signal to me that I need to pay attention to Plume, especially while it's under a 2-cent mark. I want to pay attention to it because when things go live and money starts flowing, it's hard to catch up with price action later on once the network has been built. So this is early, very early, but it's already showing me those signals. Now, Plume is hosting pilots and proof of concepts or sandbox experiments. They're not doing none of that. They're not hosting this thing to try it out to see what's working. This is set in stone. This is happening now. Now, Plume will be hosting this live infrastructure conversation, which I'll talk about a little bit later in North Carolina. But this is the kind of thing that institutional investors, not us retail investors, are paying attention to, and they care about it because they don't stay for hype cycles. A company that has millions to billions or trillions of dollars doesn't want to go with hype because hype doesn't help their bottom line. They strategically plan years in advance. Just like Bermuda, we start seeing things between Switzerland and Bermuda, and it's February of 2021. And now in January of 2026, you got Coinbase talking about it. You got Plume talking about Bermuda connection. But they were having these connections years before it happened. Regulation is changing for this money to happen. If the money's not flowing yet, after the money rails are laid, and I'm calling it money rails, it's infrastructure. Once that money starts flowing, it's going to affect overall the price and value of everything in that network that allows that money to flow, just like a stream of water. The more money that is accumulated through a network and people use it, the more potential that these other networks that are connected to them will get a share of that money, which can ultimately affect the price of the token in which you hold, especially if you got in early. So that's how I look at it. So that's that. Now let's look at where the access was gained. Now, when I talk about this, again, we're still going through this Plume report. It's important for me to share this with you step by step because I understand that this isn't for everybody. Most videos and content that is created on these type of topics are you have to try to be exciting and you have to try to do bells and whistles and backflips. This is the part that people don't want, and this is the part that you see hedge fund managers and stock brokers do, and they pay a premium to get this information, and people pay a premium to receive it because of the fact that you want to have the tools and the knowledge necessary to help guide you when making a decision about where you put your money. To me, I can't spend $20 of my money that I worked hard for on anything if I don't know what it is. So I want you to see what's happening with this in the report. So that's why this report is more streamlined and longer than a 15-minute snapshot report that you can see. So that will be between 5 to 6 minutes, but it doesn't give you the in-depth. I'm giving you the members only content right here. This, after it's recorded, is going to be placed so that those members can have access to it. And if you want access to this type of quality information, make sure you become a member so you can get it each week. Scan the QR code or press join. So let's go to next, where access expanded. Now, access expansion continued this week, reinforcing a consistent Plume theme, access over hype. There was validator programs, earn mechanisms, and exchange level visibility increase. Now, all this strengthens both retail and infrastructure level reach without relying on speculative narratives. So I'm not doing speculation here and guessing. I'm showing you what exactly happened, verified and confirmed, and I'm then elaborating on it. So let's see where the access expanded for Plume. So validate programs were gained visibility. So we have Binance. We've talked about that. In the previous week, we learned about that. The USD1, World Liberty Finance increased. MEXC also, and Republic Crypto and Korea Web3. These are exchanges from Korea, Southeast Asia, and Asian countries, as well as Brazil and MEXC. All these expanded the access to get to Plume Network token. Now, key access channels like Binance is a validator, and you can earn through that. And Binance is huge. On-chain yield is added to USD1, but what's missing? There's no loud price campaigns. What's missing? There's no speculation, countdowns. Hey guys, this is what's going to happen. It's going to go to the moon in a few minutes. No viral hype language with Plume. You're getting what you're supposed to get. You're not getting hype that people are selling you the hype, and then after it stopped being fun to talk about to make money, then people stop talking about it. You're getting quiet rails being laid because money moves silently until it wakes up. And so that is the opportunity, and that's what I'm seeing right now. Now, there's a report that came out this week that I think that everyone should take a minute to look at. If you go to Plume Network, they posted this. This was posted around about January 14th of 2026. It only had 3,185 views at the time in which I looked at it, but this is important. There's called the 2025 Multi-Chain Report. Now, this report is kind of a look ahead. What happened in 2025? This is a compilation of what happened. Now, if we look at this a little bit more closely, we can see that this report talks about the expansion of real world asset access. It talks about the broaden the range of the assets available through a product that Plume has called Nest, and a deepened safe participation across on-chain capital markets. And it was made by a company called Dune. Now, again, what I liked about this report when I read it is quite extensive. It's very long, but if you go to the report and click on Plume, you will not just see Plume's infrastructure of what they did in 2025. You'll see other companies, and that helps you to do intelligence. I want to learn about projects I've never heard about that may not have received that much hype, and projects that are popular, and projects that are being integrated, because that might give me another opportunity. So go to Plume Network around about January the 14th, 2026 on X, or you can also look up the 2025 Multi-Chain Report by Dune and take this read. This is what the report's for, to identify things that are important. Take a look at this. Get a little read of this, because you will find a lot of intelligence. There's some projects that I haven't talked about yet that I'm already starting to look at, and they are interesting to me that I will potentially talk about in the future. But for right now, I want to focus on what's important. So this report, the Multi-Chain Capital Report, was very important. This is what it looks like here. Growth and milestones across 35 blockchains, from Ethereum L2s to emerging L1s. And you can download the report for 2025. Download the report. If you have to get your news from only an online content creator who wants to hype to you, you're going to be losing out, because once that hype stops giving them views, thumbs ups, loves, and money, they're going to stop talking about it. So money doesn't work that way. You want to get in some good projects, check out this report and see what you think about it. Now, this is the next section. I think this is very interesting. I want to bring this up as well. Now, this is a talk of governance, but it's more about who had this talk. Now, this is connected to Plume, individual called Salman Banai. and he's the general counsel for Plume. He just came aboard Plume. Now let's talk about his background a little bit. So Salman Bani has an extensive resume. His background spans with the SEC exposure, the CFTC exposure, Uniswap, chain analysis, IHS market kit, and a Washington, D.C. regulatory footprint as well. Now, the signals something very specific by them, Plume being them, hiring him to onboard as the general counsel for Plume is the regulatory fluency. Is being embedded directly into a protocol layer of Plume, not just bolted on layer. They're being proactive. They're hiring real people who have real experience. Now, for real world assets, this isn't optional, it's foundational. So this move to hire Salman Bani, the move aligns with Plume, the compliance first architecture, not retroactive compliance narratives. People, they're not waiting until the laws are established and then they go look for someone who can help them navigate and stay alive. They are doing the thing. Now, I want to bring him up, but I do want to make a comment about this. January 19th of 2026, Plume reposted this. It only had 27,000 views, which is very significant. I think it's important when I see people are looking and paying attention to who was onboarded into Plume. But let's read what they said about their new attorney, Salman Bani. In contrast to at DTCC, and this is what he stated, and they reposted, tokenization project, the New York Stock Exchange is incorporating tokens natively issued as digital securities into their roadmap. This is significant. It confirms the New York Stock Exchange is agnostic as to the mode of settlement, on-chain or off-chain. This means issuers and their on-chain service providers like Plume Network can count on a partner such as the New York Stock Exchange for securities, token distribution, and liquidity. Question is how DeFi will fit into New York Stock Exchange plans. DeFi trading is the disruptor for exchange business model, not asset tokenization. Today, the New York Stock Exchange is proud to announce the development of a platform for trading and on-chain settlement of tokenized securities. The New York Stock Exchange new digital platform will enable tokenized trading experiences, including 24/7 operations, instant settlement, orders seized, and dollar amounts. Now, that was a lot, but it's not unfamiliar. The New York Stock Exchange has started the plan and actively integrated tokenized assets. Salman Bani, the general counsel for Plume Network, who they just hired, who has all this experience and a footprint from Washington, D.C. to chain houses and big name companies, was talking about this change and how it affects more than real world assets. What did it say? Question: DeFi trading is a disruptor for the exchange business model, not asset tokenization. Decentralized finance is a disruption, and this tokenized assets he talks about, and it's being integrated in the New York Stock Exchange. Why did we heard that before? Let's see. Let's see if we understand why that's important. Again, Brian Armstrong. I'm keep going back because I want to refresh your memory. These things are not separate. They're interconnected. January 27th of 2026 told you that they have partnered with the Bermuda monetary system, and Tether did too. And this to bring on the tokenization that is here now. Brian Armstrong has been at the White House, talked to the president, is instrumental to the new act that is not yet finished, but still worked on by Congress, which is called the Clarity Act. And he already is the lead of this thing, and he's connected with Bermuda. Bermuda, on January the 12th, 2026, Plume talks about their connection to the Bermuda monetary system and their letter they wrote about asset tokenization to the Bermuda Monetary Authority. Okay. October of 2025, October 13th to be exact, I told you about this in this episode about Bermuda having a connection to New York's And that connection is through Alpha Innovations, where money from the Swiss banks and other Swiss institutions that are regulated, secured through their system globally, is being routed to Bermuda. And Bermuda, one of the biggest insurance company holders, which can use a product such as tokenization, and companies that are huge like Hamilton Lane, which works in credits like the Scope product and secured senior credits, and the other ones like BlackRock. All these big companies are investing in Bermuda for this tokenization aspect. And so now we see that Plume went further, because what did they do? Plume then hired Salman Badawi, who has a footprint in that space, and he's telling us on the 19th, just a few days later, a week later, after Plume writes this Bermuda letter to the Monetary Authority, he's telling us on the 19th, a few days before Coinbase CEO even announces this connection on the 27th, that they're partnering, we get this connection. Now, do you think that's a coincidence? That also, at the same time, we see on the 15th that World Liberty Finance connects for tokenization and yield bearing through Plume, and they use Chainlink and other projects that they're connected to Plume with their partnership. Well, there is one more thing. Is it a coincidence that World Liberty Finance's multi-billion-dollar deal with Bermuda with tokenization? So that's going to be upcoming, but you got to start paying attention, because on this Plume Report, it's helping you to expand your imagination, past, I bought a token on Coinbase. It was under 2 cents. It's called Plume Network. The price today is under 2 cents. It was previously 11 cents. It was previously all-time high 24 cents. It launched in a year and it's down from that. It's up today, this hour. If you stay in that mindset, you're going to lose. And I hate to say that, because, we're supposed to be positive, but I can't be positive and watch people walk off a cliff because they just don't understand it. Now, I can't tell you what's going to happen with any project, but what I can say is that price action is a historical note based on the stock market. MACD's technical analysis is based on stock market principles. Even that in itself should scare you, because how can you determine whether or not to enter or to exit the market, or whether this is a good project based on the price action when there's sellers and buyers and the market has never been regulated? That means they have market makers, AI bots, and big money can intentionally manipulate the market differently than the stock market. So while we're studying the stock market, which is still manipulated, but there's regulations through the SEC that prevent manipulation to a certain degree. With the crypto market, there are not these regulations in place. So if you take your time to study the technical analysis, sure, it feels good for a second. It makes you feel more comfortable. It's convenient to think that you're safe, but it doesn't mean anything. At best, the technical analysis you get by studying a cryptocurrency may help you in an entry into a project, may help you to exit the project, maybe. But the real meat, the substance of your investment is the analysis of the project itself. What you're seeing here is called research analysis, not technical analysis. What I'm showing you right now, what I'm trying to connect with you in this current conversation, is that I've already stayed and identified in 3 separate sections the reoccurring connection, and you're going to see it again. And you're going to say to yourself months from now, a year from now, you're going to pull this up. And you're going to say, Underdog told me, but I still went with what was easiest. The hype. Hype is easy. Technical analysis is easy. But research analysis and understanding the project is hard. Seeing the connections, following them takes time, effort. This is not something that I do, and I don't post things every day. This is something that takes time. You can get quantity or quality. I choose quality. Now, I can't tell you what to buy, but I do want you to know it's undeniable. Do not ignore the signs. Now, I want to finish up, but we got to do a little more talking on this subject. So let's continue this after I finish one more section. Now, let's talk about the January 20th, 2026 token unlock to finalize this part 1 of episode 2 of the Plume Report. Let's get to it. So if we look at this, I want to bring up one particular point. But before I bring this up, and I want you to know I'm going to bring it up here. That's the next thing I'll be bringing up. Upcoming Plume unlocks. There was a big unlock on January 20th, 2026. We're going to talk about that. I got you. But I want to bring up some things before we get there. So what do I want to bring up? Plume sentiment and attention. Let's look at this, and then we'll get to the token unlock. If you look at the market, actually responded. I created this, and it's something that you can't find in technical analysis. What I observed is engagement trends. Now, engagement data this week reflects a notable shift, and I'm putting it here for you can read it. Attention increased, community participation increased, and speculative language decreased, indicating that engagement is increasing tied to utility, not price action. What was the top 3 engaged posts? 1, the USD1 product launch with World Liberty Finance. 2, validator earn access through Binance. 3, roadmap forward-looking participation post. Attention went up, community participation went up, speculative language went down. This is the opposite of meme coin. Meme coin, attention goes up, speculation goes up, hype goes up. Here, I noticed a trend. The more observed conversations about utility with Plume, the more people paid attention. When people would post things on Plume Network site talking about hype, price action, those posts got the least views. Why? This is established as the upcoming thing that people are seeing that has money, and they don't have time to play around with people's hype. I love that aspect of it. Attention and community participation increased. Now, the forward-looking attention and speculation is good, but the key part I want to tell you before we go into the unlock is that the more people talk about Plume, they're talking about it from a place of established norms that you would look at like a stock, like a company, because Plume is a real company. Anybody can launch a token on Ethereum or whatever platform you choose. It takes you a second. You can too. That's not hard. Plume is an actual company, and that is the difference. And it has a lot of main backers, and that's what I wanted to bring up. Now, January 19th, 2026, 2025 marked an inflection point for real-world assets. Now, since an inception of Plume, what has been focused in Plume differently, which was reported by Plume, is making usable and composable at scale real-world assets. Now, Chris Yin, one of the co-founders, reflected on the journey of Plume since they launched in 2025. And what are the things that changed for Plume? Now, I'm reading this here because I want to give you real metrics. We're not talking about hype. What changed for Plume in 2025? And then we'll get right into the unlocks of 2026 on January the 20th. A day before that unlock, what did we learn? In 2025, it was a seminal year, not only for Plume Network, but the entire world of real world assets. Real world asset value grew 3x from 5 billion to 18 billion. Now, real world asset holder base exploded 7x from 83,000 to 585K holders. Let's say that again for the people in the back who might miss that. It's not going to be in technical analysis, I'll tell you that much. How many projects you know of that have a 3x and a 7x return like that? We're talking about other than price action. We're talking about actual real people. We got 3x on-chain real world assets, real money, capital went from 5 billion to 18 billion. Woo. We talking about real people. When Plume started, real world asset holder base exploded from 83,000. That's very small. All the real world assets, 83,000 holders to 585,000 holders. This was discussed on January 19th, 2026, which goes right back to the point of this post about Plume sentiment. The sentiment is how people feel about the project. Obviously, people feel good about Plume because they are increasing in numbers like crazy. The real world assets are increasing globally to over 500,000 people who are participating. And Plume is number one in that space. So as we see, as time continues to progress forward, Plume is getting more attention through utility, not hype, not meme-based, not speculation, and more holders. And the real world asset space is growing exponentially. So for me, it's clear that I need to be in the space before everyone realizes it's good and they jump in when this thing is worth substantially more money. So the moment you've been waiting for, folks. All right. What happened on January the 20th of 2026 with the huge unlock? This will be the final conversation of the part 1 of the series, episode 2. I will finish this up because it's already been a lot of time, but let's talk about it. This one had a lot of people nervous. Let's talk about what happened. So on January 20th of 2026, a huge unlock was scheduled that had fear in a lot of people's hearts. There were 4 categories of individuals who are going to get paid on that day. What am I talking about? Companies to raise money, and they normally, if they're real companies, typically you'll see them share tokens as a product, and venture capital companies, early backers, people who want to get into it other than retail investors. And retail investors could be a part of that. They invest in the tokens before the project comes out. Now, this is like a loan. This loan has to be paid back. I think one of the misconceptions a lot of people don't have is that they're like, oh my goodness, the price is going down. Listen, this should be common sense, but I'm going to make sure I say it. If you borrow $1,000 from someone to start your company, and that person agrees to provide you bits of their company through value, and in the crypto space, typically is through tokens, and the stock market that companies have, that's through stock of the company. This is normal. This is not unusual. The thing about that raising money aspect is once a person invests in you, they expect a return on investment. They will have the option to cash in on those tokens or stock. And there's a predetermined timeline, and it varies. Typically, venture capital companies will have about 7 years, some 10 years if they invest. Some have a quicker investment. Some have a tiered investment. So the first year, they'll get so much back. That's the norm. So Plume's price was sitting around about 1.6 to 1.9 cents. And this was a anticipated issue that was going to come up because a lot of people thought that this is going to bring the price underneath 1 cent. I was hoping it went under sub penny because I wanted to get more of it. But what happened was it fluctuated from about 1.6 cents. The January 20th unlock happened. Billions of tokens were released into the market in order for them to be unlocked to be sold. And Plume went down to 1.4 cents and it was at 1.9 cents. So about a half a cent. And then it went back up and went back down. So there wasn't this overwhelming effect. Now, who got paid? Let's talk about who got paid. So there was 4 categories of people in this allocation. It was the core contributors, it was the early backers, the treasury, and the community. So even the community got paid, and that was wonderful to see that. Now, if we look at the January 20th, 2026 unlock, 20% went to core contributors, early backers 21%, treasury 13%, and the community ecosystem 46% of allocation is what we have here. The unlock progress unlocked 4.8 billion Plume were unlocked on January 20th of 2026, according to the most recent data that I saw reported directly by the project. Locked is still 51.94%, and then untracked. Everything's tracked. The unlocked market cap was at the time 67 million, and unlocked circulation supply was 4.8 billion. So was it a lot added? Yeah, it was a lot added. Did it affect the price much? Negligible price change from where it was. Has the overall price been affected long term? I think, honestly, I just feel like it is consistent with a market. You need more of these assets if you really want institutions to use them and retail to use them. So it looks like it didn't have the effect that a lot of the fear was in there. There's a lot of FUD in there too. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's a lot of FUD that was established, but that FUD was unwarranted. So that's what happened with that unlock. Staying with the unlock conversation, again, the product momentum was built on Plume. Active supply, 4.8 billion was released on January 20th. This was considered a cliff unlock. You know, people feel like they're about to fall off a cliff. But I'm looking through it again. My notes that I took on it, the core contributors, there was approximately 666 million Plume went back to core contributors, early backers, 700 million Plume. Linear unlock within that, that's tied to the treasury and the community allocations. February 20th, there'll be another unlock. So why this matters is because supply events test the narratives. And it tests conviction. It also tests the execution of the Plume project, and it tests whether demand is real or imagined. So what we look at is, did the people who had the opportunity to sell, institutions sell? Apparently they didn't sell that much because nothing happened with the price. They had the opportunity to reinvest. Now, do we know if they reinvest or not? No. We know that 4.8 billion Plume tokens were released in supply. These individuals didn't sell. Otherwise, the price would have went sub penny. It was right there, a half a cent, 0.4 cents. It could have went down to under sub penny. So nothing that was sold at a significant amount. In the future, could it be sold? Absolutely. And that's normal. Normal marketplaces have buyers and sellers. People invest. They expect to get paid. Anything less is not business. It's just hopeism. We're not doing hopeism. That's not the way our market works. So I think that this showed us, and I'll put this up here so you can take a look at it. This showed us exactly what we needed to see. And it shows us that we are still in a good position. Nothing unusual happened and all is good. So zooming in on that date, January 20th, specifically, 1.46 billion Plume unlocked. So we got 14.68% of the supply. At cliff unlock, as I said, early backers, linear unlocked. This is the largest supply inflection point observed to this date. And it's happening at the same time that yield went live with the USD1 and World Liberty Finance. It happened. Access expanded. Governance is strengthening. And the overlap is not accidental. I mean, going deeper into the data, I'm showing the data right here. You can check it for yourself, screenshot it, what was unlocked, the prices. Nothing to me stood out even up to January 23rd, I looked again 3 days after the unlock. Everything's normal. Now we're looking even a few more days after the unlock, nothing significant has happened. And so I think it was successful. It feels like it was priced in. And so that's what you have. It's all right there. All right. So I'm going to call this the stopping point. And when we start back, we're going to talk about one huge conversation about Neo Finance Market Map. OMG. This was such a excellent read if you know what you're looking at. It was a singular post. We're going to start that conversation. You want to look at it. I went through this market map for over 100 cryptocurrencies connected to Plume. As you can see right here on that market map with that red circle to the far left, the stablecoin builders, you see Plume Network for a reason and a lot of other big connections. People were sleeping on it. Give you a little sneak peek for next time. We'll talk about what I saw within the data. Neo Finance Market Map. Take a look at it. For example, right off the bat, stablecoins, stablecoin issuers, World Liberty Finance, Tether, Ripple, Plume, Jupiter, PayPal, Western Union, stablecoin builders, all having a connection with Plume. Talked to you about that before, but we'll talk more in detail. Really like that XRP connection with Plume. Kind of gave people that alpha last year, even before then. I have a video I'll bring up where I said what will likely happen with XRP and Plume. And now we're starting to see. So that is everything, folks. This was a long and detailed one. This is the Plume Report. This comes each week. Again, I give you quality, not the quantity. I just give you the things that can put you in a position to win. If you're not a member, then scan this QR code on the left-hand side, become a member, or the right-hand side for the real-world asset analysis report. My members get this each week. Otherwise, you're just out there guessing. So I hope that you enjoyed this conversation today. I really enjoy it providing it to you. And until next time, this has been the Underdog Research Channel, and this has been the Plume Report.
Aye. Be the Plume going to the start down, need permission, now I stay real with it. Lay on foundation, know it's gon' build, bro, I been biddle with it. Your homeboy check the cash out, smart contracts for the cash out. Everybody want smoke till I turn the dare, show you where the house at. Spun the block, turns out I be in BlackRock. Protocol, treasuries, bonds on me, got them padlocked. Been the best out, they can imitate. Get the best out, then you integrate. Ask Ondo, who Rambo, drew first blood, boy, I been a great. Everybody think they star boy. I'm in orbit. Stella still hella stellar though. I like Swift better for the corporates. I'm the enterprise, I Tokenized. Hamilton on chain. Zero knowledge, always never improvise. The White House, know my name.